All right. Well, welcome, Spartans. Thanks for joining us this evening for our first Spartan Roundtable discussion. We are joined by the Dean of Students Office as our co-host, represented by Shelley Wald, Associate Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Dr. Craig, who will be joining us shortly, and our special guest, the UNCG Police Department, represented by Chief Paul Lester and Assistant Chief Christopher Gesso. We also want to extend thanks to Adric Hardy, Assistant Director of Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities. Thank you for taking the time to address these concerns for our student body. What we'll now move into is brief introductions for each of our different organizations that we represent, and then we will move into our Q&A. So I will start for SGA, and then we'll go from there. It seems that anytime you look in the news, police brutality can be found in the headlines. Every single year, countless people of color have their lives taken early due to the heinous acts of police abusing their powers, causing pain to the communities and that they serve and that they are supposed to protect. Since 2015, the Washington Post reports that there have been over 5,000 fatalities from police shootings in the U.S., and every day students are worried that someone they know, or even themselves, may be added to that statistic. Students do not want to know what is enough. They want to know why it isn't enough. Why haven't we seen real nationwide change and police reform to protect people from abuse caused by police? Yet, while we have not had those reforms across the United States, we expect change and progress in our community to protect our people. That is what this discussion is about. We, the students, want to know what UNCGPD is doing to protect us, our friends, and family, but specifically protect the people of color that the police brutality frequently burdens. But just as important as this discussion of police brutality, there must be an effort to build community, which is why we are here tonight. We look forward to asking questions for students and furthering our relationship in our community. And now I will turn over to Shelley from the Dean of Students for her opening remarks from the Dean of Students.
Good evening. My name is Shelley Wald. I'm the Associate Dean of Students, and so I'm here to represent the Dean of Students Office as well as the Office of Rights and Responsibilities. It's really important for us to be a part of this conversation because really in our role in our office, we support and provide resources to students, and we also advocate on their behalf. And so we wanted to be a part of this event this evening to make sure that students had an opportunity to ask questions they had. You've heard the remarks from Austin, you've heard some of the statistics, and so we want to make sure that our students feel safe on campus. We know that everyone involved in the conversation tonight, our office, SGA, and the police department, all want to make sure our students feel safe and that they feel empowered to ask questions and they feel empowered to act when they feel like things aren't right. And so this is an important topic for us to discuss. And so we're excited that everyone's here to be a part of the conversation. We are truly grateful to the police department for being here tonight. I think their presence and showing up and being willing to answer questions, I'm hopeful, shows our student community that they want to make this community as safe as possible as that they can. They want to be a support for our students and a good resource for them. And we're hopeful that our students will continue to have some great interactions with our police department. And if not, that they understand at the end of this conversation how they can report those concerns, how they can talk to our office about how we can help to support them and to share and advocate for what they need. So the Dean of Students Office is here for students for a variety of things, not just these things, but lots of other academic things. So if there's anything that students need, hopefully our office serves as a hub for students to be able to get their questions answered and to feel like they have someone at the university that wants to hear them and wants to make their experience better. So thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to Austin and SGA for hosting this and for putting the work in to make sure that our students feel like they can get their questions answered and that they feel safe on our campus.
Thank you, Shelley. And now I'll turn it over to UNCGPD for their opening remarks.
Hello, my name is Paul Lester. I'm the Chief of Police. I've been with UNCG. This is my 28th year here, and I am an alumni. I was a student, much like you, and I started working here a long time ago, and I just love this campus. I think it's one of the best places that you could possibly be. So I'm a Spartan just like you. Let me start by saying how much I appreciate you taking the time to allow us to answer these questions. And I'm so grateful for the longstanding partnership that we have with the Student Government Association. For new students who may not know, we've collaborated and coordinated with student government in the past. And as you drive around campus and you see the radar speed limit signs on Westgate City and on Gray Drive and other streets like Josephine Boyd, those were initiatives that were started by student government. So with their assistance and our support, we managed to get those in place. And over the summer, we even tried to improve our crosswalks. And so there is a history of cooperation between us and student government because, as Shelley said, we want to be seen as a community resource. UNCG Police is not like other police departments. We are a community-oriented police department. We don't have some of the same problems that some departments might have. We're committed to the safety of UNCG. We take it very seriously, but we approach it with different than some municipal counterparts. And I hope that if you're familiar with our department, that you can see the effort that we put into community policing. And again, we do thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Now I will turn it over to our other student leaders to briefly introduce themselves. First, I'm Austin Moore, student body president, and I will now turn it over to Ali.
Good evening, everyone. I am Ali Hamdoun. I currently serve as the student body vice president alongside Austin Moore. And we're just here tonight to make sure that we have good relations with the UNCG PD and we can have a safe environment for our students on this campus. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Irving Montgomery. I'm currently serving as the Secretary of Student Affairs for the 98th session of SGA.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanisha Whitaker. I am serving as Secretary of Community Affairs. I'm just excited to be here and I'm thankful for all of y'all being here also.
Thank you all. Now that we have gotten through our introductions, we can now get into the questions that you asked for PD and for us to discuss here. I will now turn it over to Irving to begin talking about when to call police and safety concerns.
Okay, so the first question is, what are some things students can contact PD about? Students ask, can PD help them if their car battery dies? Should they get PD involved if they hear constant screaming on campus? Or what should they do if a fight breaks out?
Okay, let me try and address those one at a time. You can call the PD if you're having any kind of issues, but we may not be the ones to assist you. We may refer you to other resources on campus. For example, parking operation provides complimentary motorist assistance services for vehicles that are parked on campus. And so they may be the one that's assisting you with jump starting your battery, or if you have a low air in your tires, they might be the ones to help you. But if you lock your keys in your car, yes, we'll come out and you can call us. We'll be happy to help you. But it may be that we're referring you to other people in some cases, depending on what your needs are. If you hear, I think the second question was hear constant screaming. Obviously, that sounds like a no-brainer that if someone it's in danger or there's safety concerns, or you think someone needs help, you would always want to call the police and let us come check it out. Now, if it's horseplaying, maybe not, but we want to be there when you need us. But at the same time, we don't want to overstep and overutilize the police if they're not necessary. And so, like, for example, if a fight breaks out and someone might get hurt, we definitely want to come so we can, break up the fight and, treat the injured if there are any. But if you're the victim of a crime, you should definitely call the police, or if you're a witness there. I would like to mention that we also have the Live Safe app. If you're not familiar with the Live Safe app, the great thing about that app is it gives you the ability to share information, report things, and still remain anonymous. And I know many times that a lot of people prefer that, and that is an option. Was there another part to that question, or did I answer everything?
You answered everything.
Okay.
The next question is, why do we call the police for suicide ideation?
That's a great question. Yeah, I know that we are exploring options to be able to do some other things, but in extreme cases, it may be necessary so that we can prevent someone from hurting themselves. Now, it may not always be necessary because there are many times when students may go to the counseling center on their own, or they may go have a friend take them. And so we are looking and working with Residence Life and the counseling center to maybe find other ways to get that resource to people who need it.
The next question is, when should students call the police? What if they just have a question? Is there another line that they can call?
Yeah, there's actually two numbers that you can call. One is an emergency line, and that's the 334-4444. That is the line that rings directly into our communication center, and you can should call that in the event that you have an urgent need. There is an administrative line that you can call, which is 5963-334-5963. And that is maybe to ask questions or just to get information or be referred to another resource on campus.
Okay. And the final question for when to call the police and safety concerns is, how do we report cases of sexual assault and coercion?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Coercion.
Okay. I think there are a couple of ways that you can report sexual assault. You definitely have the Campus Violence Resource Center at the Health Center. That's one way that you can. You can, if you're a resident of one of the dormitories, you can actually go through the Residence Life staff, and they can put you in contact with that. You can always call the police, but I know that some people may hesitate to involve the police, and it's not required. You don't have to call the police, but we are here to assist if you need us. And I can tell you that we're never going to make anybody do anything that they don't want to do, especially if they're a victim of a crime. So even if we're just there to provide you with resources and assistance and advice, whether it's us or it's another staff member from housing or counseling or the CVRC, we're just trying to get you in the best place to where we can render the assistance that you might require. But it is not mandated that you have to call the police in those cases. And there are options on campus to where you can deal with it in a different manner if you so choose. But if you do choose to involve us, we will provide whatever assistance you need.
Yeah, I think, Chief, to follow up on that, I think, being able to have those discussions, if somebody wanted to report it and they needed to talk with maybe a professor or, somebody else on the faculty side, you can also go about it that way. And as a campus security authority, they would then reach out to the PD and talk with us about that. Obviously, a lot of that would depend on the willingness and ability for the victim to be able to speak with us, whether or not they wanted to do that. I believe Chief, mentioned, we're going to do whatever that person wants. And if they don't want, a full investigation, then, we'll be able to provide them the resources that they need to be able to move forward.
I'd also like to highlight the great work of the Title IX office at the institution. It's a wonderful place that students can go to report as well if they'd like to go straight to Title IX, and they can provide all the options that a student would have available to them there. And then the Title IX office also does investigations. And so it's a great place. It's a great resource on campus. They have a wonderful website, and their offices are on the top floor of the EUC.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. But there are several options of who you can go to and report when you need help.
The next topic we're going to talk about is community relations by UNCG-PD. The first question is, would the UNCG-PD support its own defunding if said funds were allocated towards crime prevention and other safety measures on campus? For example, anti-sexual assault education, additional crisis resources, and substance abuse prevention?
We would support some reallocation for mental health. Mental health is one of the things that we feel like we are working on and trying to maybe get additional resources available to people who need that. But as you saw today from the chancellor's email, we're already experiencing some cuts, and any further defunding might impact the critical incident response readiness of the police department. And really, we want to be prepared in the event of emergency, whether it could be a fire, it could be a medical emergency, it could be any combination thereof, or it could be someone who needs our assistance immediately. We do not want to fall below a certain level to where we can maintain an adequate response readiness. Right now, our average response time is about 2 to 3 minutes for all emergency calls, and sometimes less, depending on where we are and what's going on at the time. But we have to be sure that we have people to send when you need us.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of follow up on that. Getting back to your question about defunding, one of the topics that I've kind of been interested in with all this defunding is kind of defunding versus depolicing. And I think it's important to understand the difference between the two, especially when all you see in headlines is defunding. I think when it comes to defunding, I think law enforcement is willing and would appreciate the opportunity for funding to be able to go to things like you mentioned in the question, further sexual assault education, additional crisis resources, like Chief said, reallocating some of that funding to things for mental health versus depolicing and just completely doing away with police. We are definitely are on board with, helping to develop more resources on campus when it comes to mental health, sexual assault, and things like that. So I think it's important to kind of talk about both of those things and which ones, whether it's defunding or depolicing, that we would support. But I think defunding is definitely, an option that, wearing so many hats as a police officer is sometimes difficult. One of your first questions you mentioned, mental health crisis. Why is it the police responds to mental health related calls? And over time, law enforcement has taken on so many different roles. So rather than just worrying about responding to robberies and homicides and assaults and larcenies and things like that, we've also taken on things like mental health, which is not one of our primary roles, but we've kind of taken that on because we're available 24/7. We can respond and get there quickly. We can help address situations in the spur of a moment. And so we've kind of taken on different hats. And so being able to increase resources when it comes to things like mental health is definitely a plus for our profession, so that it doesn't put us in situations where we're torn as to whether or not a criminal offense is taking place and we can do something about it, or if it's just somebody that might need some help, homelessness, drug addiction, mental health. And so I think it's important to kind of have those conversations a little bit further when it comes to the defunding and depolicing.
Yeah, I agree completely.
The next question is, what are some of the barriers to good police community relations, and what steps are you taking to eliminate them?
So the biggest barrier that we have with good policing communications is participation. And the steps that we've taken to eliminate them is we will have cookouts and try to offer food to get people to participate. For the past couple of years, we've actually had several programs to where we are trying to encourage student participation and increase our relationship with students. And you've seen us in the fountain area. We've done it out by the volleyball courts. We've had everything from a DJ to various things, but it's just a chance to see the police in a different role than enforcement. And having that interaction, we've played games with students, had conversations with students, met with parents and siblings, and it was actually a very positive, very community oriented, opportunity. And then you've seen us during move in, where we're, well, not this year, but in previous years, where we've helped students as they've moved their belongings into the residence halls, and some of the other opportunities, with Cops in the CAF, our Run Hide Fight program. There's just a there's a lot of opportunities, but sometimes getting students to participate is always challenging, but we're always interested in doing anything we can to encourage participation.
And I think that probably goes a little bit both ways as well. I think, participating on the student side is sometimes difficult, but I'll be honest with you, it's not always easy as a police officer to step in front of a group and be willing to go out there and do those things, just walk up to a group and see if they're willing to kind of discuss things. So I think it can go kind of both ways sometimes. I think, one of the other barriers that I could see is not that many opportunities for the student body and law enforcement to be in a room together or in a space together where we can have very open, candid conversation about topics like we're talking about now. We're talking about these things now, but how many other opportunities are out there where everybody can kind of sit down and discuss what's on their mind and hear the different opinions that are out there and kind of get a feel for what folks have been through. We understand that everybody has kind of come up differently and has had different experiences throughout their life. And I think it's important for everybody to be open-minded to that. I think one of the other barriers that we run into is I think it's sometimes difficult for folks, and I've got individuals in my family that, it's difficult for them to realize that there's somebody outside of that person that's wearing the badge. They've got a life outside of that. That's not them when they get off work. It's somebody completely different. And so I think that could be a potential barrier is, having an open mind that, it's a job for us. It's, a way of doing things, but, we are human beings. We, eat just like everybody else does and sleeps just like everybody else does. And we have friends and go out and do things, go fishing and hunting and, whatever else we do. And so I think the officers would like for everybody to know that as well.
Hey, Hasso, can you talk a little bit about the Adopt a Cop program?
Sure. So for those that aren't familiar, our Adopt a Cop program, each one of our patrol officers is assigned to a residence hall on campus. And their job there is to make contact with the CRL, the RAs, and all the folks that live there in the residence halls. And it's to educate them. It's to build those relationships. It's to allow the residents there to feel comfortable reporting something or just having a conversation with either that police officer or others along the way. It's intended to build those relationships like we're talking about. But it's a way of doing it outside of, any sort of action taking place. And so, we talk about safety on campus. We talk about the resources that we're able to provide. We've brought the fire department over to give demos. We brought our canines over to give demos. It's really just a way for our department, our officers to kind of put on display what it is we're there for. And then also to build those relationships. I think it's important. It's really gone over well over the years. And unfortunately, with COVID this year, it's not been quite the same. But in years past, it's really been a good thing for our department and for the university as a whole, just being able to build those relationships.
Thanks, y'all. The next question we wanted to ask is more specifically related to COVID and our community relations. What is UNCG PD doing now to reach out, considering all things with COVID? What is occurring now?
So, we're in the governor's 2.5 phase, and at the governor's direction and also at the direction of the chancellor, we are making efforts to educate and encourage and, if necessary, enforce some of those restrictions. Now, that being said, we're not utilizing the police in every case. We're working as a community. We're all doing this together. And so student affairs, as well as us, and even some students, and I'm sure student government has been in the same role of encouraging and getting everyone to do the right thing. and take responsibility and do what is required so that we can all continue with our semester. But I know that one of the things that we are doing is when we get word of a mass gathering, we will go over and talk with people. We'll make sure that they're complying with the requirements. We encourage them to social distance. We encourage them to wear their mask. We encourage them to do all the things that are required to be responsible. And if we can, prevent them from violating that, we will. If we had someone who persisted and did not want to follow the rules, then and we had exhausted all other options, I imagine enforcement would be a possibility. We haven't come across that yet. We've found that most of our student body has been extremely willing to cooperate with everything that we've asked them to do. And sometimes it may appear to people that it is more people than they think, or that they're not social distancing. I think there's a huge misconception that just because you're not wearing a mask, you might be in violation. But if you're also maintaining distance, you may still be in compliance with the regulation of the governor's order. So just not wearing a mask in itself, as long as you're nowhere near people and you're not in close contact with people, you may still be okay without the mask. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I just had a quick question to go along with that. Sure. I know you guys are speaking about community relations in the past. Just to go along with that question, I know you said you had cookouts and adopt a cop programs. What are some things you could do virtually this semester going forward? Just along with that.
Well, one of them is we could have a virtual meeting with student government, and we could answer questions like we're doing today. It has been hard to do community policing in a virtual world, but we hope that answering some of these questions and providing information and encouraging people to learn more about the department. If we weren't in a COVID environment, we would ask you to come and maybe take a tour of the police department, ride with an officer, get to know everything about us and the way we work and operate, and help us search for opportunities to improve. And we look for those chances to do better. And we don't take offense to any suggestions that we get from students. We actually appreciate it.
And then our last question for community relations topic is, how does UNCG PD feel about the relationship with students and the campus? Like, what do you think about that relationship? Do you think it's strong and whatnot, or do you question it at times?
No, I think it is strong. I think a lot of people don't know that 12 of the 33 officers that work here were former students, including myself. We have a student rangers program, which is a big part of our community relations. We actually find students who are interested in law enforcement, and we bring them on board, and they work in a student rangers capacity, which is basically a student security officer while they're in school. And they get an opportunity to see what this is like as far as being in policing, and decide whether or not it's something they might want to do when they graduate. We've had several people who have gone on, graduated from UNCG, become full-time employees for UNCG, and have become police officers, gone on to get their master's degree, and continue to work here. And they just enjoy the campus environment. And to be honest with you, students make the best police officers in a university environment. They have an understanding of the campus culture. They understand what it's like to be a student, and they can relate to what students go through. So I really like that program. It's increased our diversity of the department. It's also increased the educational level of the department, and we continue to try and expand on it every year. So,
Austin, I think if I could piggyback off that, I think one of our challenges when it comes to our relationship with the students is the turnover. So as students graduate, as they move on, whether or not they move on after a couple of years and transfer to another university, or if they graduate, whatever that is, we're always trying to play catch up and build new relationships. And so I think it's different when you have individuals who are part of a community and are staying there permanently, and you can build those relationships and foster that, versus a 4 to 6 year turnaround if we're lucky. So I think what we may accomplish this year here in about 3 or 4 years we'll be trying to reaccomplish with a new group of students. And so I think that's probably one of the challenges is trying to keep up there, and discuss some of those things. I know some of the things we talk about now, the chief and I and other officers, maybe in regards to a different class of students, and we remember those things because we were here and we did them, and they turned out to be a success, and things worked well. But the students now may not even know that those things happened. And so I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges when we try to connect with students, is having to reestablish those connections each year.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Well, I appreciate y'all taking these questions thus far. Now we'll be moving into the police misconduct section of questions. The first question is, how can UNCG PD ensure that a situation of police using excessive force on a student does not happen?
Yeah, I thought about, the things we've got in place, the things that we do in preparation to ensure that this does not happen. Most people don't know that the UNCG Police Department is a nationally accredited law enforcement agency. We've adopted the highest standards that most departments across the country who are accredited are following. These standards actually are specific to our policies, our procedures, our training. We even have to prove our compliance to peer institutions. So we will have assessors that will come and evaluate us and make sure that we are conforming with all the best practices of law enforcement. And I believe that accreditation is the first step in trying to ensure that you have a foundation that's going to prevent those types of situations from happening to anybody. Obviously, all force must be reasonable, necessary, and proportionate. Excessive force will not be tolerated at this department. But in addition to that, I think by recruiting and hiring a diverse and educated workforce, like I mentioned through the Student Rangers program, we put these officers through an extensive background investigation. It includes psychological screening, includes drug screening. I think that having them in a student ranger capacity also gives us the opportunity to see what they're like as an individual. Do they have the proper temperament? Do they have the patience and the sort of the desire to really protect this campus? It's just a really good way to sort of know what somebody's going to be like once they become a police officer. By having sort of a comprehensive system of oversight that requires all uses of force and allegation, or anybody who says they're injured or if they claim an injury, that the officer is required to document it. Supervisor is required to investigate it. Internal Affairs is required to review it. And then all of them eventually come to either myself or Chris, and the chief or the assistant chief has to sign off on each one of those uses of force to make sure that it meets our standards, it meets our policy, and it complies with the requirements of the law. And so we're looking for every opportunity to improve and correct behavior and increase everyone's understanding of why we do some of the things that we do. So I encourage anyone who has concerns to bring them forward and give us that chance.
If I could add on to that, I think training is another really good way for us to ensure that excessive force on students is not happening. The top two things that I can think of just off the top of my head, one of them being our crisis intervention team training that we get. It's a week-long training, and it helps us talk to individuals who may be in distress, those who are having a tough time. It's not all about enforcement and having to arrest somebody or charge somebody with a criminal offense. It's trying to figure out what we can do to help. What we can do to help the situation and ensure that they get the resources that they need. And then the other piece of training, I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen on any news or TV or anything like that. For those who may not have heard it, it's called FATS, or Firearms Training Simulator. It's basically one big video game, and it really teaches you the use of force. So when to use deadly force versus less lethal force versus being able to talk somebody down. And so I would encourage all of you, if you have never tried it, to get in touch with myself or Chief Lester. And we can try to set up a time to be able to come for you guys to come here and use our FATS machine. We'll put you on it. You'll be able to go through. You'll have a duty belt. You'll have a gun, and it's a fake one. It's pretty much goes to a video game. But you would have that. You would have all the tools necessary to be able to do the job that we do. And you would be put in a situation where you're standing in front of somebody who's having some sort of interaction with you. So whether it's getting called to a fight or robbery in progress or somebody breaking in, and you get there and you have to make a split-second decision. What is it you're going to do? One of the good things about this is there's different rabbit holes that you can go down. So the person that's putting this together can say, hey, if this officer comes in here and is able to talk this person down, we're going to lead it down the direction, because that's what we want. We want officers to be able to respond and be able to use just their voice to be able to resolve situations. Obviously, that's not always possible, but this allows us to be able to train to be able to do that. But it also allows us to train to be able to take it up a notch if we have to. So again, I encourage all of you, get in touch with us. We'd be happy to set up a day and time for you guys to come and try that out, just to get an idea of what it is we train for, so that we're not using excessive force, so that we can use our words rather than anything else.
And the simulator is geared towards de-escalation. And Chris, maybe you can speak a little bit about the de-escalation classes that we have coming up.
Yes, so we are scheduling a 2-day course here at our police department for each one of our police officers to go through a verbal de-escalation class. It is certified through CALEA. There's a test that comes at the end of it. It is practical. So, of course, our officers are going to have to be able to talk through situations. They're going to have to be able to talk to individuals, and they're going to be graded and scored on that. And there is a pass fail. It's not the type of class that you just go to and get credit for. This is one of the hot topics right now is de-escalation. Our officers being able to arrive on scene and be able to talk to people, be able to talk to them well, especially when it comes to our student population. I think that's important. But we've got this coming up. We're hoping in October toward the end, where every one of our patrol officers or every one of our sworn officers will go through it. We're hosting it here at the PD. And so we're definitely looking forward to that.
This next question could serve as more of an educational question to explain the processes of UNCG-PD and dealing with different misconduct situations. The question is, under what circumstances would you support the creation of an independent oversight body to monitor and review police department policies and practices? What should be done to limit some of this power? So maybe we could discuss, what is the current process, and then would there be any, push for an independent oversight body?
Right. So this is we've had a student police advisory board for a number of years, but sometimes we don't have as many participants as I wish we did. Currently, every year when that board turns over, it's like trying to recruit new people, but I would love to have a new group of students who could act as a advisory capacity to me and help me understand the concerns of the campus. We do the same thing with the faculty staff advisory board. Now, I meet with them once a semester, or unless there's some concern. Most of the time, we will discuss current events or anything that causes them concern. And our policies recently, this is something we've been working towards, is that recently we made our policies available online. So you can go to our department's webpage and you can actually access the current police department policies and get familiar with any topic that you are interested in. And it's a great way to sort of understand why we operate the way that we do. If you have questions or concerns about a particular policy, we can discuss it. We can work through it. We're not convinced that everything that we do is perfect. We just are trying to meet many of the standards that are imposed through our accreditation process. And a lot of those policies that you're going to see have standards in them to make sure that we're doing things that we should and that we're providing the campuses with the services that they need. But I'm open to including the advisory board in everything that the police department does.
Thank you. the next question is, who do I report to if a police officer is breaking conduct? What are you not supposed to do in that situation?
Right. So I had a similar question in another group, and one of the golden rules about complaining about the police is never complain to the person you're complaining about. You know, if you have a concern or an issue with something that an officer does, don't take it up with the officer. It's not going to progress. If an officer does something wrong, the best thing that you can do is report it to the police administration. You report it to the chief of police. You report it to the assistant chief. You can even go to the dean of students. We have such a close working relationship with the dean of students. They can help facilitate that complaint. And I need you to report any misconduct of officers so that I have the opportunity to thoroughly investigate it. Which gives me a chance to make sure that our officers are doing exactly what they're supposed to. I know that we're looking for confirmation of that misconduct. And I don't think people are aware that all of our officers have body worn cameras, and they're required to turn them on with every interaction. And we use them quite frequently. They assist us tremendously with being able to address concerns, because we can go to the video many times and walk through it, play it back, listen to it. It's amazing how sometimes you think one thing happened, but then when you watch it on video, it's slightly different. And it helps us address a lot of questions and concerns that the community has. And so that's always available to us. Our process is very methodical about trying to make sure that the officers are doing exactly what they're supposed to, and that we're taking care of any misconduct that might occur.
One of the good things about those police body cams, especially if, like Chief said, if folks are letting us know about those complaints, if they're letting us know that they've got concerns with how maybe an interaction went with a police officer, it can go a number of ways. But one of the two of the ways that we have really seen is, being able to educate the public, being able to educate the community. So if, you were pulled over by a police officer on a traffic stop and you kind of wondered, why things happened the way they did. Maybe you thought that the officer was wrong for doing whatever it was. Well, being able to explain why it was the officer did this or that. We've had some individuals who have come in to complain, and sometimes it was just a little bit of education as to why things took place the way they did and the order that they took place is sometimes helpful to that person who had no idea why they happened that way. And then other times, we get those complaints and we look into it, and we find that there's better ways that we as police officers can do things. And we put that into action, and we retrain and address those issues within the department to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And sometimes that process even identifies training needs. It can identify things that maybe we need to adjust our policy. It's really a good way for us to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to provide the service that we're here for.
Gotcha. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate you asking those or answering those questions about police misconduct. Now we'll be moving into race and racism with the department, and Tynasia will be asking these questions.
Hi, everyone. The first question is the UNCG Police Department going to actually address or even study the meaning of the Black Lives Matter movement? And why is it important for Black students on campus today?
Yes, the UNCG Police Department understands the history of Black Lives Matter. We know that we are very familiar with the movement. We agree with what it stands for. We support, our department is all about equity, inclusion, and diversity. We are gearing our training, as we've talked about, towards being respectful of culture and trying to build trust and transparency and legitimacy with the community. Each officer is very much in tune with the current events that are going on. And we are taking that into consideration as we interact with people during this period of time. But believe me, we definitely understand why Black Lives Matter is important.
Thank you. And the next question is, what is UNCG PD's specifically doing to address racism within the department?
Right. So, as previously mentioned, I mean, we have a lot of things with focusing diversity and quality of our employees at the time when we hire them. The extensive background checks that we go through, we can actually open up a process, not find anybody that's suitable, and have to repeat the process, but we won't lower our standards for the people that we hire because of the importance of having the interaction, having a positive interaction with our community. So having a constant and continuous system of training and oversight is another way for us to police the department from within and making sure that officers are doing what they're supposed to. But in 2015, we adopted President Obama's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. This had a blueprint that was designed to help police promote effective crime reduction and build relationships with the community. And it's been a big help for us because we've been doing this now for at least, I'd say it's been 5, maybe 6 years, but its focus is to build trust and legitimacy through transparency and accountability. So having conversations like this and helping people understand why we do what we do, and then maybe even exploring the possibility of, is there a better way to do it? We're open to that. You know, the main thing that we're here for and what our purpose is the safety of the students and the safety of the campus.
Thank you.
Real quick, I think one of the other, one of the other things that I think that we're able to do to address some of that is our duty to intervene. And so one of the things that we've really kind of instructed our officers and really expect them to do is to intervene in situations. And so, you know, we look at cases like, you know, that recently happened, Floyd. You know, we look at that and there's a lot of learning points and things that we took from that. But one of the biggest things is the duty to intervene. And we've had instances here at our department where, you know, not like that, but, you know, if an officer is arguing with somebody and you know that they're not going to get anywhere arguing, like Chief talked about, you know, don't complain to that officer, wait and complain to somebody else because you're not going to get anywhere with that officer. Well, we train and we expect our officers to intervene when they see that there's a situation taking place where they're not going to be able to get anywhere with it. And so, you know, being able for our officers to be able to step in and stop something from happening with another officer and the public is important. And so we expect our officers to step in and address something if they think that it's not going the right way.
Thank you. And for the next question, is UNCG PD participating in any explicit bias training or other sensitivity training?
Yeah, I believe Chris mentioned that we have training coming up with the de-escalation, also the crisis intervention training, and specifically our fair and impartial policing. All those are training, and they are annual requirements to where we are constantly working on our ability to communicate and to de-escalate and to try and resolve problems in a way that is more peaceful. And, you know, we just don't have as much of a problem on the campus as, say, a municipality might. It's rare when we use force, and it's even more rare if it's used against a student. It's most of the time, if force is used, it's in a case where we're doing something. I can tell you the last time it happened, we had a student's car that was broken into, and we caught the individuals who fled the scene, and we chased them, apprehended them, and they were charged with breaking and entering of a motor vehicle. And that was a use of force because they ran, and we had to tackle them, and they were charged with breaking into a student's car. And there's a couple of cases like that, but I'd say on average, we use force maybe 6-7 times a year. There could be more depending on how many people are involved in each incident. But for the most part, we are doing everything that we can to try and, you know, put the officers in training situations that are going to focus on fair and impartial policing, de-escalation, and crisis intervention training.
Thank you. And for the next question, are there any checks for inclinations to white supremacy, domestic abuse within the department. In other words, if an officer were to say that they are a part of KKK and or be a domestic abuser, would the department flag that and act accordingly?
Absolutely. This is actually part of our background investigation, part of our oversight. It's the reason why we have professional standards, which you probably know more as internal affairs. But that would be misconduct, and it would be something that would be investigated. It would be something, if it was a new hire, they wouldn't even be considered for the position. Even now, when we look at applicants, we're checking in their social media. We're developing our own references and asking people what this person is like. We really drill into their background. We talk to their neighbors. We talk to their friends. We talk to their relatives. We try and make sure that we understand, what this person is like. Again, I refer back to the Student Ranger program. Having them work with us while they're students really gives us that opportunity to know what that person is like before we put them on the streets as a police officer. But I wouldn't hesitate to take corrective action on anyone who engages in that type of misconduct.
I think one of the good things about our department is the size. And so, because we're so small, I could name every person that we work with. We've got about 60 employees, Chief.
Yep.
And, I could name all 60 employees, first and last name. I could probably tell you the majority, something about their family, what they enjoy. I mean, that's the good thing about being a part of such a smaller department is we know each other so well. And so being able to know your employees is important, those who you're working beside. And so, the first inclination of, some sort of behavior like that would stand out within our department. And like Chief said, we'd have no problem taking care of that right away.
And most of our officers would probably report it before we would pick up on it because they wouldn't tolerate it either.
For the next question, you think the racial makeup of the community's police department should be similar to the racial makeup of the community it serves?
Yes, I do. But it's challenging to compete with a municipal or the county. We are trying. That's the reason why one of the benefits of the Student Ranger program. But it's hard to get minority officers or minority applicants to take an interest. And so, anybody who wants to be in law enforcement, if you're thinking about a career, this is a great place to work. So come check us out.
Yeah, and ours is our demographic, the community that we police is a little bit different. We take into consideration our student population versus the population. Some will look at the population of the city of Greensboro. Some will look at the population of a 1 mile radius of campus. And so it depends on how you look at it. You can look at it several different ways, but definitely we agree that, the racial makeup of the community should be similar to that of the police department.
Yep. And we're constantly trying to add to that diversity and recruit for that purpose.
Speaking about training again, I know you spoke about de-escalation and intervening training. In specifics, what diversity training does PD do? If there is not any, is that something you guys are looking into?
Yeah, and we actually have it already scheduled for October. Chris, what was the dates again?
I believe we were looking at somewhere around the 22nd and 24th or 22nd and 28th, something like that. It's at the end of October.
Right. And this is in addition to training that we've done in previous years and will continue to do because there's constantly new and better ways to come up with how to de-escalate and how to communicate with people and how to handle various situations. Sometimes just getting somebody away from an incident and calming them down is enough to prevent maybe something from happening.
Thank you. Moving into the next and last section, it's about pandemic safety implementation. I know you guys have touched on this already briefly. There's just a couple more questions about it. The first one, I could direct it towards Shelly if you could have some input on that. Is there someone we can call that is not PD if we have COVID-related concerns?
Absolutely. So there is a COVID concerns form that's listed on our website, along with every other form that we have in our office in case you have a concerning behavior about a student, you have a policy that you'd like to report that you feel like isn't being followed. All of our forms are in one place to make it easier. But these forms are monitored every day. Our staff are responding to every single one that comes in, forwarding them to the appropriate office. If it doesn't involve a student, forwarding that to either the chair of a department if it's academic, or forwarding that to the director of the department if it's a staff member. And then for all students, we're acting on all of those. We're taking COVID incredibly seriously. We really need our students and our faculty and staff, our visitors to campus, everybody to take it seriously. We're one community, and if we don't all look out for each other, then we're going to be in this pandemic a lot longer than any of us want to be. And I'm sure the students on the call can say they'd sure love to not be in online classes anymore. So we'd like to make sure that if we take things seriously and we follow up on these, that they can definitely have some action with them. So any student that has already gotten a phone call about this or gone through the conduct process knows we're taking it very seriously. Those are private matters that we don't share with everybody else. So sometimes it's hard to know that action is happening if you don't directly see it, or if you don't know of someone who's directly involved. But we are taking it seriously, and we have the support of everyone in student affairs at the institution to make sure that we're following up and we're making sure that our students, and as well as faculty and staff, are following all the guidelines that have been set forth.
Thanks, Shelley. The next question is, what happens to officers who not wear masks?
Well, and it depends if they are socially distancing themselves and they are not around anyone. That's an acceptable practice for anyone to do that. But when they come in contact with people, they're expected to wear their mask. And if they violate that directive, then they would receive corrective action. As with anything, if you violate a policy, you don't follow the directives of your employer, then we will take corrective action. And sometimes that might mean having a conversation, or it could be something more severe depending on a particular employee's history. But we have to step through the process of progressive discipline, and our employees understand the importance. We all want to be here. I was here in March and April when the students were gone. This campus just doesn't feel the same when the students are not here. So the officers and all the staff, we want the students here, and we're going to do everything we can to do exactly like Shelley said: take it seriously, wear our mask, be responsible, and follow the restrictions like we're supposed to.
Yeah, I will say, I think as a community, I think we're all doing a lot better within each of our departments, whether we're faculty, staff, or students. I think the students are doing better. Surprisingly, I'll admit, at the beginning of the semester, I figured there were going to be just several students just walking around campus, without masks, and there was going to have to be a lot of education taking place. But I'll tell you, when the students got back, everybody, for the most part, was wearing masks or some sort of face covering. Our faculty and staff, everybody's kind of gotten used to it. And, I think for us as police officers, I think, one of the things that comes to mind, and even they're doing better and making sure that they're wearing their face mask, but, responding to a critical incident or medical call, whatever that may be, trying to figure out what you're going to do as a police officer when you get there, if you're going to try to help take care of somebody, but also remember to put your mask on, can sometimes be a little bit difficult, trying to figure out all the things you're going to do. But like I said, I think our police officers are doing better, and I know our supervisors are making sure that the officers are wearing those when they're inside, outside of buildings. I know for me, when I'm walking around campus, the last thing that I want to do, even if I'm socially distanced, is for somebody to take a picture of me or something like that in my uniform, and it's going around somewhere else saying UNCG police isn't wearing face coverings. And so for the most part, our folks are even doing it when they're socially distanced, just as a way to be a good example to our community. And so for the most part, like I said, I think everybody's doing a great job all around in our community wearing face coverings.
Yeah. I would mention, though, that if you find yourself out on campus, especially on the Westgate City side, and you need a mask, if you forget your mask, if something's wrong with your mask, we are a distribution point. You can come into the PD lobby. The receptionist will give you a mask, and we have some that we can distribute to just help make sure everybody has one available.
Thank you. And for our last question, just to preface it just a little bit, I had a conversation with Dean Hamilton, and he was telling the group that I was on the phone with that some of the faculty had not been wearing masks and they've gotten in a little trouble for that. So for this question, if all students on campus have to wear masks, why aren't all of our employees held to the same standard of wearing PPE, which is personal protective equipment? This could also be directed towards Shelley or the officers.
Sure. So as those conversations come in and as we get emails from students, sometimes we get them from family members, we're really directing people to fill out the COVID concerns form just because it's nice to keep it all in one place. And that way we can keep it everywhere and we can refer back to notes. So in case someone says, I reported this and you didn't do anything, we can show that no, we've passed along that concern. So I know I sit in weekly COVID meetings, as a lot of other staff and faculty at the institution do. And there are so many conversations about the importance of wearing face coverings and what's an appropriate face covering and what's not. And so all that information has gone out. Alan Boyette over in the provost office has been a wonderful partner to have. He's been very, very prompt in helping us to address those concerns that students or family members have about faculty members or other staff maybe not wearing a mask. And so we've passed those along, and we know that those individuals are being held accountable. But it's hard, again, to show that, right? Because that conversation isn't going to happen in front of a classroom, right? The chair of the department's not going to come out in the middle of class and say, hey, like, let's talk about this. That's a conversation that we'll have in the appropriate setting. And so we just ask that students report it, just because we as staff members and the police as well can't be in every setting all the time. And so when faculty member or other staff aren't wearing a face covering, that we ask that they report it so that way we can follow up and we can make sure the appropriate people are notified. But those conversations are happening. And HR has been very clear about what standards we have for staff and faculty on campus and the need to really wear it. And again, it's that we're all one community. And if we can all pitch in together, then this can be over with sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree with everything Shelley said, and we are all held to the same standard. And so we will do exactly what we're asking students to do. We do have sometimes the misconception that, if people have to wear a mask, if they're socially distancing and they're not wearing a mask, that's acceptable. You're not required to wear a mask unless you cannot social distance. And so occasionally, and like Chris said, we're going to try and set a good example and wear the mask as much as we possibly can. But it's an effort. It's a community effort. It's our shared fate. We're all trying to get through this and make the best of it. But I guarantee you, we're definitely going to hold our employees to the same standard that we're asking our students to follow.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, that exhausts our questions that we had for this Spartan Roundtable. We really appreciate you taking your time out this evening to sit with us, answer questions for students, and increase that level of communication and community that we all really want to see. I want to give a special thanks to UNCG PD, Chief Lester, Assistant Chief Jesso. I really appreciate y'all, working with us and attending tonight. Thank you, Shelley, for attending. It's always a pleasure to work with you all. And thank you to my fellow student leaders for stepping up and helping ask questions tonight. With all you coming together, we were able to complete the Spartan Roundtable. And I'm very excited that we were able to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. That will be it. If you have any questions or whatnot, you can definitely reach out to SGA. Our email is sga@uncg.edu. And if you have any more questions, we can definitely get you in relations with UNCG PD or the Dean of Students to answer those at a later point. But